Well, hello, welcome everybody to the February 2023 Southern Fried DNN Meetup. We are excited about this one. We've got a little bit of recap from the recent DNN Summit 2023 that happened online virtually. We'll have a lot of cool things to share about that, some key takeaways and all that. But before we do that, let's jump into a little bit of community announcements. And boy, do we have a lot of them this month. Ryan, did we have a meetup last month? Remember, it seemed like we had to cancel one recently, and I don't remember if it was last month or if it was month.
I think it was shortly before that because we did have one for January. Do you hear me, or am I?
Yeah,
or am I...
yeah, I can hear you good.
All right, it's frozen on my side, so I may drop out in a second. Yeah, we had one in Monday that was I think it was formulas and too sexy in January.
Oh, that's right. It was Jeremy.
So there was that, and we were prepping and looking forward to Summit, and now we're here on the other side of Summit.
Yeah. So that was a good one too, by the way. I had a lot of comments after that one. Sorry, my brain is like foggy because leading up to DNN Summit, it gets chaotic and, like things just get really busy. And those of us that are presenting are scrambling to get our presentations together.
Oh, yeah.
There's all sorts of things. Ryan's over there trying to make sure everything's working on the hop-in platform and all this kind of good stuff. So it's a lot of scurry that's happening a little bit before that. So I get a little bit of brain fog, and then it takes me a week or two to really recover from that intense lead up to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a lot of announcements for. Oh, I am muted. Wow. It just all of a sudden decided to mute me. Can you hear me now? Oh, looks like Ryan dropped off. Maybe Zoom is having some problems. Is everybody able to hear me okay? Just Mike.
Yes.
Okay. Good. And welcome everybody that's joining us after we got started here. So one of the things I wanted to point out is just the upcoming schedule for Southern Fried DNN Meetup. You'll notice that we have this one planned, but all of the future meetups are to be determined, except for, well, that's a past one. Sorry, that's the one from last month. What I wanted to plead to you guys is that we are always desperate for people to share what's going on in their world as it relates to DNN, sharing things that you've learned, some cool tips. Maybe it's a open source project that you've been working on, or a cool project that you've been working on that you'd like to share some insights from. There's really nothing that's off the table, that wouldn't be appropriate for a meetup like this, as long as it is somehow tangentially related to DNN in some shape, form, or fashion. So even if it's like a mobile app that you're building and you're using DNN as back end, or you're doing something, crazy, like you're just using it as a database for something. I mean, Ryan, you did a session at Summit, and I know you'll probably talk a little bit about this later, but you did a cool Summit session that was talking about all these various ways that you could integrate.
So yeah, the things that we tie into DNN. And one of the ones I'm going to promote that I really enjoyed was Peter Donker, and he started talking IoT. It started off DNN, but it went IoT.
Yeah, so there's so many things that we could use as content, on these sessions. Of course, they are recorded and posted afterwards on YouTube and shared on southernfrieddnn.com and various social platforms and all this good stuff. But let us know. I mean, we're on Slack, we're on Discord, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Ping us up, let us know that you might be interested in it. If you need some help kind of talking through subject matter, that would be great. We'll be happy to help out and help guide you. But, also I've encouraged others in the past to not overthink it too much. I mean, it can be as formal or informal as you would like. This is a very welcoming and accommodating group. We're not high strung, when it comes to presentations and how they're done. There can also be roundtable conversations. Ryan, I know you've done in the past where we just have a topic of conversation and you just kind of go around and get people's input and insight on this, and we have more of an open forum. You've also had kind of a a leading questions kind of, I don't know what you called it before, but like where you would go through, you'd have a punch list of things that you wanted to talk about on a particular subject matter. And we just kind of go through those questions and stuff and see what people's thoughts are.
An example of that was we did a compare and contrast kind of thing where, you know, a few years ago, we did one where it was favorite form modules and tackling certain issues with those form modules, and everyone brought to the table their favorite way and their favorite module to tackle X, Y, and Z. And we had a great compare and contrast brought together by the group of who was there that time. I'll also second David's point about, you know, this being as structured or not as you need it to be. Also the length of time. If you have a short, you know, bit of tidbits that you want to put together and it's 10 or 15 minutes of content, it doesn't always have to be a full meeting session of content that's an hour long. We're glad to put together and help schedule smaller bits of content and suggested items to fill the time as we need for our meetup.
Yeah, you'll see how some of the past events we've even had two presenters on. So a lot of times we'll do that whenever there's a shorter segment. You know, you want to share a few tips or something. Like here's one where I was talking a little bit about web components, and Sebastian Leopold was sharing a little bit about internationalization type things, you know, and using multilingual sites and all that. So, yeah, I think last year, was it, or was it, 2021, that would have been 2 years ago now, right? That entire year, I think almost every meetup we had two speakers. That was great. That took a lot of like direct communications with a lot of people to try to help organize that. But it's really fun because if we know that people have interest in talking about something, it's not hard to put these things together, you know, and do it. Some people use slide decks. Some people did not use slide decks. It's okay. We can do it any way that makes sense for what you want to talk about. So I would just encourage, don't be afraid to let us know that you would be interested in either presenting or just sharing some tips, and know that it's a pretty open format. There's no true structure when it comes to it. Of course, we want to have a game plan and all that, but there's not a set way of doing it right or wrong, right? So with that in mind, Ryan, I think you have another special one planned coming up where we don't have it on the schedule just yet, but
it's a little far out yet. Every year we finish our SoFri end of the year with a party. Back when we met in person, because we've had a few incarnations of where we've met and when, but we've always, when we met in person, tried to put together basically a Christmas party where we'd head out. But when we all went virtual and into meetings online, it became easier to have an end of the year party that was online. So the last few years, we've done our DNN game shows as a fun way to finish off the year, with all of us having a little bit of fun for the sessions. Several of those have been DNN Jeopardy. So we've taken our DNN Jeopardy games and had those at DNN Global and DNN Summit and at SoFri. So that's kind of spun off several rounds of DNN Jeopardy. And we certainly have those on the shelf that we can roll out DNN Jeopardy because it's enjoyable to put out. This past Christmas, our last holiday one in December, we did the $10,000 pyramid, and that's Dick Clark's traditional game where you try and think of prompts to make somebody else say a phrase, and that's been a lot of fun. We did that both at Southern Fried, and then I ran a session of that at DNN Summit, which if you participate in DNN Summit, that was one of the larger events that got viewed and stayed on with for about, 70, 80 people. So it was a lot of fun to do. If you can watch the recap, if you didn't see it before, it is a lot of fun to watch somebody struggle to come up with prompts for simple words. Anyways, so we've done that at Christmas already, and we certainly have it available to do again in the future. However, I have always wanted to put together DNN Family Feud. I think the Family Feud game format is a lot of fun. I think that we could imagine putting together two sides of families, and maybe we have the envisionative and more creative team on one side, and we have 10-pound gorilla on the other side, or something like that. So we get a couple families to pit against each other, and we do Family Feud. There's a key ingredient to Family Feud, which is that whether you're one host or the other, they start off and they say, we asked 100 people the following questions, and let's see if your answer is up on the board. Well, this is your chance to please be part of those 100 people. We posted a survey link on the website during DNN Summit, and we were asking people to participate. Recently, I went and posted that as well on the Slack DNN workspace, and I also posted it on Discord. So it's been put out there and shared in a few different places. We'll also share it in the recap. David?
It's also in the chat window now
in
Zoom here, so feel free to grab that. Now, I could show that, Ryan, but there's some font issues that happen on my machine, and I don't know if it's my machine.
I do see that. That is weird. No worries. It's a Google form. It's a simple form. It asks open-ended questions for you to put in text answers, and that's the way that the Family Feud works. Is people put in their suggestions, and some of them, they're all DNN or technology web development related, but they're often the phrases and the questions are designed to get some fun answers, especially from the group and from the people who are playing the game. So you've got everything from, what's something you have to explain to people about DNN, that's DNN related. But then you also have some fun questions like, what's something you should not do or be seen doing when your boss or your client is around? So there's fun questions. It's designed to make for us a fun Family Feud night sometime in the future. But before we can do that, I need 100 people to fill out this survey. So if you would, you watch this on a recap, or, later on, or you have a chance now, please go and fill that out for us. We'd really appreciate it.
Ryan, what are you going to do if only 98 people fill it out? Are you going to say, we surveyed 98
people? We will, we'll see. Maybe I'll throw in some interesting things, and we'll survey ChatGPT and see what it answers for some of our answers.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. We'll be sure to get that one scheduled out here on Meetup whenever we set a date for that. So Ryan, you kind of talk about what date makes the most sense for that one. We'll get that one done.
Thank you much.
Let's see. Next thing for announcements. I wanted to mention that our friends, DNN friends across the pond, have another DNN Connect conference that's set up in a place that they have done this before. And you'll see a picture here right on their dnn-connect.org site. I think you can get there also without the dash. But there I am. Yay, we were in Switzerland, and just this beautiful mountaintop experience where we all had dinner together and stuff like that. They're having it in Champéry, Switzerland again, which is actually quite easy to get to. You may look on the map and go, oh my gosh, like where would I fly into? How would I get there? Actually quite simple, flying into Geneva in Switzerland, and then it's just a train ride to Champéry, and it drops you off right close by. It's a short, as Peter would say, a short flat walk to the hotel, but it is not flat. I'll go ahead and warn you. But it's not far, and it's easy to get to, and it's just a beautiful town, a little ski village, and it'll be in May 25th through the 28th. I'm going to try my best to get over there. We'll see if it can happen this year, but registration is open, and they do have a call for speakers out already. I believe the details are over under events 2023. There's the main landing page. And then I think there's how you register. And to see, I think the call for speakers, this menu is a little bit unruly. You do have to have an account on the site, which is free to set up. Just set up an account, register for an account, and then you'll have access to post any sessions that if you would like to present over there. That is also a very informal kind of conference, because
it's a different structure. Yeah,
it's totally different. If you've been to like a DNN Summit or a DNN Con or a Day of DNN here in the States, or I think there was one in Nova Scotia as well, so I didn't mean to say just in the States, but in North America, it's a little different over there. They have scheduled sessions just like you would expect at a conference, The content tends to be a bit more on the, I don't know, I probably shouldn't say this. I guess it is a little more techy when it gets down to it, because there's a lot of members over there that are more hardcore kind of, developer kind of perspective on stuff. But there were some, not so techy sessions as well. But the leading up to the sessions, how you get there and doing it, it's not formal. It's not in a, like you may be thinking Hotel Swiss, like it's a big convention center kind of hotel. No. We're talking about a chalet kind of hotel they've got a building next to it that has a few rooms in it, and you kind of go in there, but it's not formal or anything like that. They stick to a good schedule and everything, but it's a lot about what goes on after the sessions and between the sessions and at meals. One of the cool things about this conference is that when you register, it's an all-inclusive type registration. It's not just a fee for attending the event. It's your lodging and all your food for all of those days and all your drinks, including alcoholic beverages if you would like to partake in that. And it's all inclusive. So when you look at the pricing of this, I think this year, see if I can get this to come up. If you're going by yourself and not sharing with anyone else, I think that's the most expensive. It's 490 euros, which is pretty close to $490, US, depending on exchange rate at the time, but it's pretty close. That is not bad for, 4 days and 3 nights.
Hotel lodging and food and oh my goodness, yeah.
And you don't have any transportation expenses because everything's right there at the hotel and the place, and the town is just fantastic. It's a lot of fun. Anybody that's gone could attest to this. It's just a lot of fun, a lot of socialization. We all eat together at the same times, and there's a lot of time to eat. So it's not like, oh, let's go eat and then hurry up. We got to get to sessions. No, it's not like that at all. As a matter of fact, it's a big ordeal in the evenings for these dinners and extended time together. And we just hang out. And some people hang out longer than other people hang out to the wee hours of the morning and having a few drinks here and there and having a good fun. But it's a lot of fun. I wanted to really give that a highlight here and encourage you to attend if you've never been to a DNN Connect conference. Let's see, moving right along. There are a lot of new blog posts since last month. I'm going to kind of go through these fairly quickly, but if anybody wants to add some more color or details to some of these, feel free to do so. The first one, Will Stroll posted out here. They have a new release of the DNN Page Manager 1.1. That is an open source extension that they developed to help you have some more power features as it relates to managing pages within DNN. There is a blog post out here from Timo about the DNN conference, the DNN Connect conference that I was just mentioning. So you can take a look at some of those details. There's some new open content templates that I believe Will Stroll and Upendo Ventures have released that work well with the Mandeep's Porto theme. So those are there. And I think that's one of their kind of celebration items for the 20th year of DNN. How many of you knew that it was 20 years that DNN has been in existence now? It's crazy, isn't it? Crazy good. Another post that Will put out here was one specific to the 20-year anniversary or birthday, as he put it. And this one's cool because it's got a lot of videos from members of the DNN community that have explained kind of how DNN has improved their life over the years. So I would highly recommend listening to some of these. Some are really good. There's a few short ones and then some more in-depth ones that's been put out there, and go check those out when you get a chance. They're really good ones. There's one from our friend Jeremy who's on here, working in the background. And there's one from Addison Oliveira. Hello, hello. So go check that out when you get a chance. Lastly, this is actually a great blog post that was put out here by Daniel Metler, kind of highlighting some of the DNN 9.11 release and why it is so important, and what their perspective has been so far on utilizing it. And I'll put out a little few highlights here. After upgrading a lot of their sites, they're seeing that the sites feel about 30 to 50% faster. And I can attest to that. I mean, it's amazing how much faster it is. I mean, not to mention all of the security things that got addressed in 9.11, that being kind of the most important reason for upgrading. But, oh, by the way, would you like your sites to be faster?
I was just touting that as a 9/11 improvement to a client that we've been working to get them out of 8 into 9, and there's some issues of getting up to 9/11. But that performance and resources issues is one of the main extra benefits. Obviously, there's security, but originally Mitch's rough, back of the napkin kind of look at his resources on servers was something like 60 to 80% faster or fewer resources necessary to run DNN instances on the server. So if you are constantly battling memory or issues being taxed out on servers, getting up to 9/11 has that fringe benefit that itself could be touted as a major improvement.
We may have alluded to this before, but what was really funny among a lot of the contributors for that was not really a goal of 9/11. And maybe this is bad to admit, but like I'm all for transparency. We were like, hey, have you guys noticed this really is a lot faster? And we were like, I wonder why, that it just wasn't a focus, but it was a byproduct of a lot of things that got done. And we definitely have some suspicions on where that is now, but it was all in hindsight. That's the funny part of it. So,
and our best guess was that we bumped a lot of dependencies, and one of them is Petapoco, which everything goes through it as soon as it touches data. So that's one guess. And removing Telerik, of course, removes handlers and stuff that would run in any request. So that's our best guess, but that wasn't the focus, just happy coincidence.
Yes, it's great. The other thing this is a fairly long blog article, but I like some of the color commentary and also the history that was pointed out in it, of kind of, well, what led us to this point? Why was this such a big deal? Well, it was kind of hard, to get to this point, and the efforts shouldn't be overlooked of those that contributed. But good blog article out here, so check this out if you haven't. This is not a too sexy blog article. This is really about DNN, so take it out. But then there's also some tie-ins to how that's helped in other areas, and some of the open source projects out there and commercial projects that really relied on Telerik and stuff, and now how they're even better now because of this as well. So kind of forced everybody along, and to get further along in all that. But a great article.
I think you accidentally muted there.
It did it again. There is something that Zoom is doing to automatically mute me, and I'm not touching my keyboard or anything. Anyways, what was the last thing you heard?
You wrapped up on the last, and you just switched over to Discord, so we missed the intro to Discord.
Oh,
sorry, Discord to would you bring up in Too Sexy? That's what we missed.
Yeah. Okay. So I know a lot of people that are watching and participating are users of Too Sexy. There's been quite a bit of activity out there recently for version 15, and I just happened to get a little bit of nugget of intel from Daniel Metler that said, in one of the issues that we had posted, let me see if I can find it here real quick. Yeah. So down at the bottom of this issue, he said that they have a pre-release of 15.2 right now, and that has resolved some of the issues. They plan to release 15.3 tonight and then get an LTS out next week. So that'll be really good news for those that are waiting to get some things that weren't addressed in 14 that are now in 15, getting that LTS out there so we can kind of upgrade production sites and so forth. So that's really nice to know. If you're interested, the pre-release of 15.2, it's marked as a pre-release here, but it is on the releases page, but it won't be listed on the main page when you see that there because it's marked as a pre-release. That'll probably be a moot point as of tonight when they release 15.3. But if you needed to get to that, it does resolve quite a bit, especially if you were upgrading from version 15. There was some issues with 15.1 there that things got broken in that process. So 15.2 addresses those. We did have a few releases over the last month of NV QuickSite. So if you haven't updated that, do so because there's quite a bit in here. I'll just highlight what the main thrust of that. It started out with 2.3. Let's see which one. Yeah, 2.3.0, and then we had to release quite a few patch releases very quickly. But the main point of that release was to enable support for SSL locally. So when you're installing DNN, you could use SSL and not have to manually go and add your bindings to IAS. And it allows you to select any available SSL certificates on your machine that can be used for an IAS website. So it's actually a nice little feature. It had been requested by Will Stroll. So thank you, Will, for putting that out there. And happy that that's now a part of the release.
Hey, I think someone should congratulate you on 3 releases in under 24 hours, I think. that was just
probably
awesome,
my fault.
and it helped me.
It's probably my fault a little because we were hanging out and okay, that's good, but okay, that's good, but
yeah, they would have been spread out a little bit more because I think, Daniel testing a few of those things, it kind of pointed out things that would have been caught eventually by somebody, but he was able to catch them early. So it probably felt a little chaotic. Good news is that as a user of NV QuickSite, you'll see when you open it up that it'll always let you know when there's a new version available out there. So that's a nice little feature to kind of let you know you're not on the latest. So even if you did update, you get notified pretty quickly there. Let's see. Anything
to add to this, it's really, really cool because the DNN 911 also on the installer has a checkbox for SSL. So now as setting up an SSL site locally, if you want to do anything that requires SSL, it's just like a couple clicks because everything gets set up for you. And that checkbox is pre-checked if you're accessing the installing through SSL. So it's really a breeze to set up now.
I'll just show it here real quick because I didn't even think about this. Doing a quick demo would be great. So the only visual, and I'll just do a install of the release candidate 3 that's out there for 9.11.1 here. But what's new here is just this checkbox to enable SSL. And it should remember that setting. So if you're always wanting to use SSL, if you use it once, it'll remember it next time you come in and automatically have that checked. Check the box, then you get a drop down of all of your available certificates that could be used. In this case, I would just probably use the IAS Express Development Certificate. And let's change this to DNN 091101-RC3. How about that? We'll go next, and it's going to create it. And we'll go next. And the cool thing is once it gets done extracting all the files and doing all the stuff that's doing behind the scenes to set up your users and IAS and all that, when you click this, it'll actually open it with SSL. Now I've got Kaspersky running on mine, so it detects that it may be an untrustworthy site, because you're using a local self-signed certificate. So I'll just say that I wish to continue, and then you'll see that we get HTTPS and then whatever site we used. And of course, it takes a little bit to load for the first load on DNN, but now you're in SSL. So without having to do anything manual, because I know Will was saying they do this quite a bit, and sometimes you'll start up the site and realize, oh crap, I forgot to, do the bindings or whatever, and you have to go back and do that. So anything to save time with it is really good. Okay, so moving right along, if you have been living under a rock and not sure what's going on in the DNN community, you probably didn't know, but there was a conference last week, a virtual conference, DNN Summit 2023. It's the main topic of the conversation tonight. We just really want, or today. Yeah, it's not night yet, is it, Ryan? But we wanted to kind of talk about some of the key takeaways and some of our experiences. And this is a little bit more of an open forum and so forth. But if you don't know, dnnsummit.org, this happens every year. Sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's virtual. Ever since COVID hit, it's been more virtual, but hopefully in the future, it will be some in-person type events again. If you attended the event, then you would have been registered within Hopin. So if you go to hopin.com and you log in, on your main account, you would see the list of the previous events that you've attended and so forth. If you go into the 2023 event, then you should be able to see a button here now that says, that allows you to watch the recordings of the event. And the reason I'm pointing this out is if you were unable to attend for whatever reason in real time, it's okay. You can actually still register for the event and access to the recordings of every single session that happened. So obviously the thing that you'll be missing out are on the conversations that happened and the chat channels there for each of these, but you can still access every single session recording that was there by registering after the fact. Ryan, do you know off the top of your head how long that's going to be open to be able to do that?
I'm glad you passed me the note, because there are a couple of things about that and the reason that it exists this way right now. Previous versions of Hopin, and the years that we've been doing this, in between each year we do this, Hopin improves or changes a little bit about what they're doing and how they're doing it. So there have been improvements every year, especially regarding the recorded sessions. And one of the things that was an issue previously is that the recorded sessions were available as long as the event was, quote, active. And as soon as the event was over, you no longer had access to the chats that you had with people, to the messaging with other people who attended the conference, and you couldn't see the recordings. So last year, we took those recordings and we posted them externally, or previously we did that so that the recordings would be available after the event ended. This year, we're running it or structuring it a little bit differently. And at least for the moment, we're leaving the event open. So that means that right now, the event is open and you're able to go watch these recordings. Fringe benefit, you can still go and communicate and message with people you already connected with. So because the system doesn't give or share phone contacts or email addresses, if you made a connection during the conference and you want to follow up with somebody, you can still do that right now inside of the system. David, was that a frown face? Because looks like it says no healthy stream. I love that.
Yeah, evidently they're having.
Which thing are you trying to load there?
Yeah, I clicked the button to watch the recordings. Let me.
All recordings, one recording. I didn't pay attention to what you clicked on.
No, it looks like they're having technical issues because I'm getting the same thing.
Well, that is
Broke
something
the
that occurs.
interwebs.
We've certainly seen that.
But I have been after I went in this weekend and watched 2 that I had missed during, so it does work. It's just down right now.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, that I also had an issue with one video that I wasn't able to watch at the moment, but then I switched and another one was working. So they do have some technical difficulties, but as far as the recordings, they are all posted and you can watch them right now. And at the moment, the expectation is we're going to leave them up for the year so that you can watch them through the year up until the beginning of the next conference. So whether that means a cutoff time in December, at least at the moment, it's going to stay up for a while. Now, there is another nuance in the fact that the DNN Association that runs DNN Summit, we now have an annual connection to Hopin. So I will throw out there, especially Jeremy posted in the chat here that he wished DNN Summit was twice a year. That's something that's being discussed. And I realize I'm going out of order, David, with some of the things you're planning to come to, but one of the things that we need for all of the people who participated in the conference is there is an exit survey. It's a Google form, so you do need to be able to load Google Forms. Some government organizations weren't able to load Google Forms, but that survey is going to help us know what we should do and what the general group wants us to try and work on. And some of the things that have been thrown around as ideas is for us not to have to wait a full year before we do something virtual again, because it is virtual and we have an annual connection to Hopin now. We can do another thing coming up in the fall or in the summer. And some of the ideas being kicked around are things like doing a dedicated day of training or doing a shorter conference over an evening that might have 1 or 2 sessions instead of having a larger extravaganza. So do get us your feedback. I guess that's coming right back around to finish up the note to say, David, this is going to stay open and therefore you can still register for it for quite a while longer. When we realize if we're going to use Hopin again for some other things in the year, at that point in time, it might close. So stay tuned. Best idea, get in there over the next month or 2 and check out these recorded sessions.
Well, of course, they would go down right in the middle of our meetup. How dare them when we're trying to access and show people how this works? It's pretty self-intuitive, though, when you get in there to see how it all works. But there's basically an embedded player for each session, and they're listed in the most recent session to the oldest session in the conference. So you should be able to navigate through that and find the sessions that you're interested in. They do follow the session schedule that is published out on dnnsummit.org. So if you were to look at, sorry, I should have clicked schedule. So looking through the schedule, if you find a session that you're interested in, then you should be able to scroll down and find those sessions that you're interested in. And according to Hopin, they will be available until February the 10th of 2024 at 11:55 p.m. For me, I think it's Eastern, but I don't know what that will be for others. So that's a full year to take your time, go in and watch them at your leisure. And so forth. So I'll leave this one up here, and maybe Ryan, I don't know if you have certain things that you'd like to kind of point out, but I was thinking that we would go through and kind of, if somebody attended a particularly good session or had an interaction at Summit that is noteworthy or that was cool, that led to something cool happening or that kind of thing, I thought we'd just kind of open it up and talk a little bit about those. I attended quite a few really good sessions, and I've got some ideas on some things to share. But Ryan, do you have anything that you'd like to point out?
Sure. I'd love to start off with that. I'll do 2 that stood out to me as interesting or popular. In one of the very first sessions during the conference, let's see, 1 o'clock on the first day, Peter Donker was there talking about create your own analytics engine. And this is a great example of a session where you go in expecting one thing and then 10, 20 minutes later, you realize you're talking about something else entirely interestingly different. So I sat in with Peter as the moderator to run through this. And my expectation, especially with the write-up, was that we were going to be talking about using the core DNN database of the users, the users online database table that still exists inside of DNN, even though the active users module isn't used the same way it used to be used in the past. So he was talking about how to take that and use it to do your own internal analytics for basic user tracking, active people in the site, and making a modern replacement for analytics if you need some core analytics, and all the changes ahead with Google Analytics and GDP mean that you can't you can't have analytics, or you're just tired of the whole game and you want something internal. This was going to be talking about how to do that in DNN now. And then he went in even more interesting a direction, and he started pulling out some Raspberry Pi and doing some IoT, and it suddenly turned into every time that a user hits a web page of your site, you could have an IoT device light up or spin a flag or do some neat things to tell you you've got visitors on your website. I mean, it was very entertaining. And as usual with a development session, Peter was in there working inside a Visual Studio, making changes and building as he was talking. So if you're interested in watching someone talk through something very creative and go in a different direction than you might have been expecting by the title, I think that's a great one to start off with.
Brian, I am particularly interested in this one. I haven't had a chance to watch the replay, but it was happening right during one of my sessions. So I wasn't able to attend. I could only imagine what he was doing. My guess is he set up an MQTT server on a Raspberry Pi, right? And then that's based, for those that don't know, it's like a messaging bus. You can kind of think of it as, where you could integrate that with Internet of Things devices that you have. You can integrate it with a dashboard kind of thing that's running on your desktop or something like that. I don't know if he used like Node-RED or something like that. And
Node-RED was involved. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a fun session. It is a fun session.
It's kind of cool because we've run into quite a few situations, especially in a firewalled environment where they may have rules against using things like Google Analytics or some other analytics platform like that. Something like this could potentially be very helpful for something like that, as long as the traffic wasn't too incredibly heavy. I could see.
He started out by just talking about doing your own simple stats and having a table present where you could start doing some stats. You need to do some roll up to keep it clean, but that, he kind of started off with that, and then it got fun from there.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that one.
The other set of sessions that I'm going to recommend, I are the ones that you, David, basically David Poindexter and Clint Patterson and Dana Vladas were part of, to help kind of start from a step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of set of sessions. And they were on at times when I was either doing something or moderating, so I didn't get a chance to go back into and watch them, but they were lots of fun. I heard lots of people talking about them, and just looking, because when the conference is running, you can see how many people are in each room. And the first, 5-10 minutes of a session, there's a certain number of people, but then if it's not exactly what they were looking for, or they want to hop around to some other rooms and see if something's more interesting, it's a lot easier to do that virtually than it is in person. So people hop around, and then by about the second 15-minute mark or so, you see the people who are really engaged or interested in that topic. And boy, there were a lot of people in every one of those sessions. And I heard, because at every time we have a conference, DNN Con in Baltimore, DNN Con in West Palm Beach, DNN Summit in Denver, DNN Summit in Orlando. We've got 8 to 10 years of conferences where we have the same statistic every time. About 50% of the people who come to a conference have never been to one before. It's their first conference. So we always have new people coming in, and there were many people I was catching in chat or in conversations who were just lit up by the sessions, David, that you guys were doing. And they were saying things like, we should do this more often. I would watch this for entertainment. This is fantastic. And they were thoroughly entertained. So if you haven't caught that hype, I'm promoting it now to everybody who watches SoFri on Recap. These are some great sessions to go to for entertainment purposes, and to see what Clint's starting proposition was, what he was looking for and why, and then how David and Daniel all teamed up together to make some cool things happen.
That's cool, Ryan, to hear you say that. A lot of times as presenters, you can't follow the chat very easily, in it, and you don't really know what the vibe is. But this was a really fun set of sessions, and just to point them out, the first one was from Clint Patterson, who was, this is all kind of based around a real world project of Clint's that he's been doing, that is a mobile app.
He's a hunting and outdoor aficionado, and he spends time, doing different things they're hunting, and here we're talking about, meat and butcher prep related.
Yeah, so it's a real niche kind of market solution that he's come up with, and nobody's done it, not well anyways. And so these 3 sessions were from our different perspectives on this, but the first one was Clint and some lessons learned as a product owner, and kind of how that leads to a successful project. The next one was, I was talking a little bit more about the project experience in general and how that led to a really good user experience in the end, just in the way that we ran the project or are running the project, the way we interact with each other as team members, some of the principles that we've used. And then Daniel finished it up with the building the back end to support changing requirements, because Lord knows we had a ton of changing requirements through this, and they're ever evolving every day. And the architecture and all that stuff really played a part in it. So it was really neat, is everything from the product owner perspective to more of the UI and UX kind of stuff and project experience, to the real back end hard coding, hardcore coding aspect of it. So they go really well together.
Well, so those are my 2 sessions that I wanted to promote. I'm sure I'll chime in on some other things here and there. I'll self-promote and say that if you're just looking for something fun during lunch hour and you want to watch the game show that we had on the second day, the very last closing session before we got into After Dark, was the game show block for DNN Pyramid. Had several contestants that we got into the game so that they could play with us. Cassidy was willing to join us, and I think everyone had a good time, and it was a lot of fun. I think Alessandra's on here with us live right now. She can attest to having played the game, and it's not as simple to do when you're playing as it is watching at home. So it's a lot of fun to shout answers at the screen when you watch it for a playback. So I say, if you got a lunch session where you want to put something on for entertainment while you're eating, I'd recommend the DNN Pyramid game show.
That was a lot of fun to say, and it is true. You, as an outsider looking in, you can think a little more clearly and everything. You're not being put on the spot. You're kind of analyzing everything, but as you're playing, it's a different story. So it's easy to be a backseat driver on some of those things. I so much wanted to just type the answer so many times in the chat. What are some other sessions or experiences that people had that would be good to point out?
I'm going to have to say that if you just want to laugh, you can watch the first half an hour of my session. It is just being me, and it's ridiculous. I created a drinking game for that, and I put the rules and like, on Slack. I put the rules on DNN friends on the DNN Connect group, and I'm sorry that if your liver dies, because seriously, I was laughing at myself going, oh my God, what's going on in here? All I can talk about is Funko Pops and fix my hair. That's all I was doing.
Okay,
It's ridiculous.
so to connect the dots here a little bit, when you're able to get into Hopin and when you're able to click on watch recordings and it actually shows something, you'll see that there are 2 sessions by this name, DNN Diva Bag of Tricks. And what she's referring to is one where she was practicing, I think, right? Where you had basically 30 minutes of just sitting there talking about stuff.
Now it's actually even worse. I have the test one and I have the actual one that I got there too early. So there's, there's options. There you have options. But the first one was the test one. The second one was me whining, where's my moderator?
Right.
And those are my Funko Pops. Yeah.
I watched one with Aaron where it was just him and Benny Sue doing 25 minutes of test setup. And I'm like,
yep.
And then it ended and I'm like, what happened here? It didn't start. And I realized there's some recordings up there that should not be.
So yeah, I'll mention that because the way these videos are managed and prepped inside the Hopin system in the past, honestly, Mitch Sellers had to go in and do a lot of manual prep, and he had to make starting points and end points for every single video, and he had to do a lot of manual work to get the video set up. So they weren't immediately accessible. It was like a week later. Well, this time it was push button ready to just publish these puppies. So I think we may go back and do some cleanup later, or we might not. We might leave it as is, and therefore you can watch Alessandra check her hair and knock over a stack of Funko Pops. Yeah, you might find some things. That
I do not knock out my Funko Pops. Hello, I'm a serious collector.
If the speaker started the stage where they joined and started sharing video, then it started recording. And if they stopped and then came back on again later, it would have 2 recordings. There were some, I think Don Gingold has a session that he didn't stop, or he stopped presenting video, but he didn't leave the stage. And therefore the end of the session has like 2 hours of black screen because he didn't leave the stage. So there are some things that, could use some manual cleanup, but right now, I think in favor of getting videos out there, it is what it is at the moment.
So there you go. You got stuff that's not just a session. I mean, to look forward to and looking at these replays, you can have a drinking night following the rules of DNN Diva.
Yay.
I was looking through some of these other ones. There's quite a few I didn't get to attend. Did anybody attend the realities of Evoke?
I missed both corporate Ignite sessions, and they were during either times I was speaking or moderating. So I'm looking forward very much to going back and catching those 2 sessions. I know there were some interesting things that were released or presented, but missed both of those. So we have 2 sessions that are from the Ignite group of folks. We have the realities of DNN Evoke, and then we also had their sponsor track as well.
I was trying to find that one. Where is that one? Ryan, do you know?
Basically, there was a day 1 and a day 2. I'm trying to remember.
I think it was day 2.
Day 2.
I'm not even seeing anything on day 1 from them. So let's see.
We got realities of DNN, and it was Brad Mills
here.
Right there.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
I don't see any other ones from them. That's what I was wondering.
The second one. I might be.
Is there another one? I think there was only one. No,
it was in the final sessions.
That's the only one I knew of. I do know they dropped an interesting bit in there that be curious to hear what people's feedback are. Those things we don't know exactly.
Actually, guys, I did watch that video yesterday, and to summarize, they present 2 customers. They use Evoke, World 2 providers. One is in Colombia. I think it was like the focus to show Latin American companies working with Evoke. So that person shows like 3 companies in Colombia that use Evoke, and also an ONG company. I don't remember the name. And then they announced something called Roadmap Central, something like that.
Right.
And I think that was it.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. Don't know if we want to talk about here or we open up to later conversations, but one of the things that was kind of described there was a bug bounty for future improvements to the Evoke platform and encouraging community developers to get involved to help improve the Evoke platform. So I don't know the specifics of that, but I'm looking forward to watching the video and learning a touch more
I don't
about it.
think anybody really knows the specifics of that just yet, Ryan. I do know
Sounds
that
like it's
that's
a future thing that they're going to announce and outline.
it's a great
About the bounty. I did hear, Ryan, that the Evo customers, the Evo clients, will have like annual bounty points, and they will decide to which projects assign those. But every year they will have like points to assign. But that's for Evo clients. I'm not sure how bounties will work for people in that community. But yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it was definitely focused towards their Evoke product and to trying to prioritize things that people were requesting going forward was the intent that I assumed.
Yeah, I think everybody's anxious to hear a little bit more of the details about some of that. I think Mitch is planning on meeting with them too relatively soon to try to understand a little bit more of the details of some of that, see how that's going to actually work in practice. So yeah, one that I attended is that I loved was Ryan's session on extending different ways, creative ways that in the past they have extended DNN or integrated with DNN in unique and weird, ways. And this one was all over the place, but in a really good way. Just a lot of different use cases that you just don't run into every day, and really neat ways of thinking about this and doing it. I found it very good, Ryan.
Thank you. You don't always get a sense that what you do yourself is interesting to others. So it's nice to hear that you thought it was interesting. I'm glad. We consider ourselves DNN integrators. So we use DNN as our main toolbox that we build things with, and we focus on projects where we make disparate systems talk to each other or communicate with each other. And because of that, DNN, we've made DNN talk to a MySQL database, or to RSS feeds, or to APIs, or to SharePoint, or to all kinds of other systems, Sage ERP and stuff like that. So we make DNN as the focal point that people are touching, but in the back end, we're making it connect to and do a lot of different unique things. And so this was kind of for our sponsor session, kind of a show and tell of some examples of those things and things we've made for people, and kind of saying, here, look at these bells and whistles and look how interesting they are.
I liked it when you did a session like this, because a lot of the sessions, and by design, are some variation of a repeat session that's been done in the past, because as Ryan mentioned earlier, a lot of the attendees of these events every year are new and have not seen that. So a lot of the content you'll see has just been kind of refreshed for the new year, if anything's changed, but it's a lot of the same sessions. So a lot of these I had seen before in some shape, form, or fashion, but I love seeing sessions like that one, Ryan, because that was really good.
Thank you.
Daniel, did you attend any that you thought were especially good that you'd like to point out?
So I had 2 presentations myself, and then I was like jumping from one to the other. So I watched a little bit of everything, but I mostly then rewatched recordings after the fact.
I know one that you did, I had to attend, and that's the reason I wasn't in the Vogue one, is I wanted to attend Daniel's funny code session. I thought this was hilarious. I mean, it was fun and sad and cringeworthy in some ways, but I love the way you presented them in such a way that it's like, okay, we can learn from these, because I mean this does happen in the real world, and people are at different levels. They're thinking about things differently. Some people don't have as much experience in best practices or coding patterns that are more appropriate in this, but he had a huge collection of different blocks of code that were just, either funny or really, really bad. And not only that, I love the one particular example that you went through it was a mess of code, but you actually went through the process of how you refactored it, or how you would approach refactoring something that is so messed up. And I found that really helpful as a developer, because I'm like, I would probably have just laughed and threw up my head and complained a little bit and been like, oh my gosh, I just don't want to deal with this. It's probably what my approach would have been, but I love your methodical approach of kind of how you break it down.
I'll also add to that. I really learned a lot too. There was some funny stuff, but I love the way you talk about things and what's right and wrong, and you also explain why. And the one I appreciated the most is one of my personal pet peeves. Anytime I see someone using if, then, else, if this, then, I attack those, tear them apart, strip them down to nothing, or replace them with switch case. And I'm glad I'm not the only one that just hates those unreadable nightmares.
Yeah, to me, it spells out a clear definition that you're doing more than one thing. You're breaking single responsibility. If you have a if and then else, and you're doing many things here. That's wrong.
That was a fantastic example too.
Yeah.
You had a really good one on screen there. I was like, oh my God.
How many lines was it before you refactored and then after you refactored? Do you remember roughly?
I think that specific example was like maybe a 30-line thing, and it ended up being about 10 or something, because like we're just deciding what needs to be done, and all the implementation of actually doing it, they go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And the checks also go elsewhere, because that's doing one thing, so.
Some of the funniest humor is when you can recognize yourself in it. And I have to confess that some of the code that Daniel was having a lot of fun with, I'm thinking, Christ, I'm glad he didn't see what I've done at times, because you're in a hurry and you don't have time to properly plan, and then you move on to another project. And it's inspired me to look back and say, you know what, maybe I should tidy this up. But I loved it.
You also evolve as a
worse.
developer. So when you wrote things a couple years ago and you have to go back to your own code, sometimes you realize, oh boy, I didn't know to do this proper back then. And I always think,
or you're
when
in
I'm
a hurry and you
now,
get it working, and then you turn around and just move on because, well, it appears to be working and it's not tested well. And then you find out 3 months later when you look at it again, oh, there's a big loophole here.
Yeah. And even today, sometimes I write code and I'd say, I should take the time to do this proper, because I'm going to be nice to future me in 3 years when I have to come back here.
Yeah. So sometimes I look back at my old code and I go, wow, that was awesome. Or then, but other times you go, oh my God, what a bloody
hell
mess
was I doing?
So I just it was hilarious in a very personal way, looking and saying, he stole my code. How did he get that stuff?
I really liked
what he didn't tell you was that was his earlier self code, all of it.
And I really like the preparation for it, because like some of these things, or I collected this along like a full year. So then what did I want to do with this, and preparing for it and showing how to refactor and stuff. It was pretty cool. I liked it.
Yeah, it was a nice session. I know one that I wanted to see was this Power BI session here that also happened at the same time that Peter Donker's happened, and also during one of mine. But I'm just kind of interested. I don't know if we'll ever have a real project to utilize Power BI in this way, but I know for those of you who don't know David Rodriguez, I mean, he's been around the community for a while, was a corp employee for, back when there was a real corp, instead of the acquired corp. But very smart and has done a lot of open source type things in the DNN space as it relates to Azure and some of the use. But he did this session on how to use Azure. The Power BI embedded approach for being able to process large amounts of data and visualize them in a certain way or certain kind of reporting requirements on that. But he has an open source project out there that helps with a certain type of connectivity to this using, I can't remember what it's called right off the top of my head, but I was looking forward to seeing this one. Another one of those, kind of sessions that you don't see a lot in these conferences. What other ones did people see? I didn't catch a lot of them just because of session conflicts for me. But Ryan, what was this one about? Really, the DNN community user groups, help, and more.
So that's an example of one that we have roughly every year, and we'll invite on anybody else who's there from other user groups or other things. This time it was me kind of presenting a little bit of things from the opening session that we talked about ways to get involved and where to go look for help. So the beginning half of that was really talking about those things in depth. We went through and got people the information on how to get connected into the Slack workspace or the Discord chat. We then talked about DNNcommunity.org and the forums that are there. We then talked about some of the other things that are in DNNcommunity.org for the blog posts and for the DNN docs and for the different elements that are present so that you can go look for help. So we kind of, in a larger scope, talked about if you're new into DNN or you've inherited a DNN website, where do you go to ask questions and how do you go through those? We then kind of transitioned from that to talk about this idea of giving back, especially if you're asking for help, to maybe give some help. And you don't have to be a developer to know how to help improve the DNN product. You can help the DNN product by being a community member using DNN. So we then kind of transitioned to this idea of where can you get involved and how can you help? So we talked about downloading beta releases and testing those. And if you have a server instance where you have a DNN instance that you can do those test upgrades on, that a vanilla instance of DNN that the core developers are working on when they're making their updates, that behaves an expected way. What we really, really need the help with is your instance with 6 modules installed together that make these little cross relationships that when you upgrade that instance, something slightly different than if those modules weren't there, if your data and your settings weren't there. So we really made a good pitch there to say that if you can just install betas as tests and then come back and say, hey, all good, or I had these 3 problems, that would make a really big impact for the developers improving DNN on the regular. We also talked about going into GitHub and looking at the list of issues that have been reported, that if you see an issue reported with a new version and you've done your upgrade for that new version and you haven't experienced that issue, or you can help go follow somebody's report and say, I can confirm and reproduce this, here are my notes on it, or didn't happen for me, that's still valuable. So we just talked about kind of low bar ways that you can get involved. And then a good segue then for another thank you for Daniel is we went into GitHub to show how you can support the developers that are working on DNN regularly, and you can do through GitHub these sponsorships, and that can be one time or that can be recurring sponsorships where you can buy a cup of coffee, make a small donation to your favorite developer, and that, if nothing else, is an attaboy, tells them you care about and you appreciate what they've been doing. And I showed a ticket where we posted an item where in GitHub, I had posted a suggestion for improvement into DNN. I think it was in the users set of screens inside the persona bar. And I said, yep, this was a suggested item. And we showed how it was a new request. And I think Jeremy had chimed in and said, hey, that would be valuable to us too. And to kind of close it full circle, Daniel Veladas, who is one of the people I note that I support in GitHub, he chimed in and said, here you go. I fixed that. I put it into the next pull request set. And, full circle, we showed posting a suggested item, checking in on it, and then watching it get brought into the system. That was pretty satisfying. So this that session, David, covers a lot of that stuff and other tips and tools and things you can have if you're new to the DNN community. There's a lot of links there and suggestions of where you can go.
Well, cool. Well, I know there's a lot of other content that's out here that.
Hey, I'll do one more call out. I won't talk about it a lot,
Please.
but that Daniel's session on the images and what they did with Too Sexy, that is worth watching. And I actually went into one of our projects and for the first time ever used that feature, and my jaw dropped. It's so much easier than I thought. I didn't think it was free, was part of my mistake. I thought it was a patron feature. And he answered my question during the session and said, no, that's not true. It's free. And so I tried it. It works. It's amazing. It's resizing images on the fly with all these picture and image set stuff that's built into HTML5. Oh my God, one line of code, and it spews this giant structure of HTML that does a great job putting images on the screen in the best possible format. Fast as possible, fully cached. It's over the top. It's great.
There's a product that's built into or used within Too Sexy called Image Flow. It used to be Image Resizer. Now they use Image Flow, and it's server side real-time rendering of only what you need when you need it, and of images. So you can have one large image, and depending on the viewport that you're doing it, it spits out through some helper functions in Razor and other ways too. But like, yeah, it was amazing, Jeremy. That I remember him showing it was Kit dot something. It was like one line of code, and it renders this beautiful picture tag in HTML with WebP images and fallback images and sizes for the various viewports to show and all that. So it was really good.
Yeah, it's deceptively easy for huge benefits.
Yeah, I think the performance, being able to deliver exactly what you need at the right size when you need it in the right size, and being able to do that so easily, it's kind of silly not to use those features.
We might key that up for a future SoFri, that that image resizer and image flow has some server things that you end up setting up and some things you can clear out and clean up over time. It's an amazing system, but we could do a deep dive into that and talk about different ways it's used and different things that are part of it, because it is a very popular thing and is auto magical in many cases.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Ryan. That is something that can be used in your custom modules. It can be used elsewhere. It's not just a Too Sexy thing. Now, Too Sexy does offer some helper type Razor syntax and things like that you can use to leverage it behind the scenes. And that's a lot of what Daniel was talking about. But these things can be used in Xmod. No, they can be used.
Once it's installed, it's available in the instance to use for anything you need to use it for.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't have to be in Too Sexy to use image flow.
Any other highlights from any of you that attended some stuff? Well, there's tons of content out here. Again, just as a reminder, if you weren't able to catch all of them live, or you had conflicts in the schedule, be sure to log in to hop in. We'll see if it's working now, just to see as we try to wrap things up here. We'll see if it's working again. Oh, here we go. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so once you get in here, if you haven't already, I didn't fill this out on purpose so I could show it during this session, but you will be prompted if you haven't filled this out to a short survey of some questions here. So be sure to do that and submit that feedback to help the organizers a bit. But if it doesn't automatically send you to this, it probably will though. It'll go to the replay and you can actually go through and find your session. And like, we'll just take one of these for instance. Let's see, Ryan's here on the community. Just hit play and it will bring it up, and you actually see the history of chat that happened inside of the event or in, you know, all that as well over here. So if you want to catch up on all the scuttlebutt that was happening in the water cooler talk, you could do that. But just playing this, you'll be able to see the whole thing. The thing that I will point out on
The heckling.
Also the links for your references and things. That's a good point that, you know, all of those end up being in there as if they were shared in the chat.
The thing that I didn't see is actual chat for the session that you're looking at. Unfortunately, it looks like it's just the event on here. So you don't see the session chats, which is where a lot of that happened. But just be aware that when you do play it, it's recorded, I think 15 minutes ish early from the session. So when you start playing, you may need to take it forward to when it actually starts, you know, to get to the real content there. And they do have this picture-in-picture feature, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know what you would use that for, but yeah, you can do all that. And you can go full screen with these too, which is actually new for this year, I think, in their player, which is helpful because fortunately or unfortunately, they put the speaker image down here instead of to the side. So a lot of times when people are sharing the screen, you know, if they're sharing a block of code and they're not zooming in, it can be a little bit difficult to see some of that. But it's better than it used to be, so that's good.
Just realized it flips the picture. That's interesting.
It'd be nice if they allowed a way to turn it off, you know, on there.
Yeah, in the control. Well, it's a good point. It's a new video player and a new video setup than they had last year. So always look for that. We can always post suggestions for improvements.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think that's probably it, unless anybody else has anything that they want to mention. Just remember that you can go out here and register even after the fact and get access to all of these. So feel free to do that. It's worth the price of the ticket, I would say.
You know, David, I'll mention, I may regret this later. You know, one of the things about registering and coming to summits virtually is that we did have this fantastic swag box. Ooh, didn't hold that right. Where we had items in the swag box for you, and the first 200 people who registered were guaranteed to get sent this this box of goodies. And we've got everything in here from the NV Quick Clip, which is, I think, fantastic fun from David taking on NV Quick Everything. We've got our swag DNN Summit enamel pins. So we've got DNN pin, we've got I love DNN, you've got a little Yeti. Even if you don't want to sport a DNN logo, you can't help but want to sport this this Yeti and show him off places.
Those pins are really cool, by the way. Those are not cheesy little pins. Those are real good quality pins. So
absolutely, we've got books, we've got
very cool.
We've got all kinds of stuff in here, and at the moment, we have a few kits that haven't been sent out. And so if you haven't registered and you're watching this after the fact, I think if you register, I'm going to send you a box. So that's kind of on my plate to do. So if you haven't registered and you missed getting a swag kit, if you register, I think we're going to send you out, some of the remaining boxes that we have here.
I was going to mention here, Ryan, somebody in the community, Don Gingold, posted a video of a box opening, and let me see if I can find it here real quick.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Alessandra is with us.
He did a fun unboxing.
And I'll mention that we used her as our guinea pig. So thank you, Alessandra.
How come?
Yeah, so I'm sharing it on my screen now. And if you do have access to Don's Facebook profile, this video here, I'll post the
Link.
URL or link to this post. It's an excellent video of that goodie box that happened, the swag box, and he goes into great detail. I mean, it's a little over 8 minutes long, so he spends a lot of time going through this and showing in detail what's included and so forth. I'll kind of turn this off, but I'll kind of scan through it, but he shows the different things and all that, goes through each one in detail, and
All right.
including the
All
shirt
right. Nice.
and all this kind of stuff. Really cool. So check
Very
that
fun.
out.
Very fun.
Okay, well, I think that'll conclude our February 2023. I was going to say DNN Summit.
So proud.
It's not DNN Summit, Southern Fried DNN Meetup, talking about DNN Summit 2023 and a bunch of other cool community stuff that's happened over the past month. Hope you can join us next month. Next month.
David, mute. Yeah.
You are muted again.
I
Just kicked
don't
it off again.
know. Zoom is doing it automatically. I'm not.
Don't know the deal.
Yeah. Don't know what the last thing you heard, but it would be the third Thursday of the month as usual. But
It's March 16th.
we alternate the times each month. And since we're doing it at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this month, next month will be 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, because we will be in Daylight Savings Time at that point. So
March 16th. 6:30.
actually, is that true? That may be wrong. We switched to Daylight Saving Time? Yeah, maybe we do. Yeah. I can't remember if I did this on purpose or if Meetup's doing it for us.
I think it is.
But as you see, we do not have a subject for next month. So let me know as soon as possible, or Ryan or any of us that are involved in this, Clint, just let us know if you have an interest in participating next month as a presenter and doing something cool. Hope everybody has a great remainder of the day, and thanks for joining.
See you on Slack and on Discord.
Okay, good luck on the drinking game. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.